a story already told, but it gives us an opportunity to hone our divine psychology skills by looking at it in relationship to what its characters, what its symbols, what its sacred numbers represent to us as part of our story. And it's the story of a couple who had tried for some decades to beget a child, but unsuccessfully. They were true to their faith. They practiced all those tenets and rituals that were part of that faith. They prayed, they importuned the gods, but to no avail, until one day, after again going through the fasting and the rituals and the praying, that night after coming together, the wife had a dream. She dreamt that she had conceived, and that the child that she would have would be born with a gem. And this gem, it was said, contained her essence, her soul. So in the dream she was told that this gem must be kept with her at all times, because if the gem was taken away, she would become as good as dead. She would fall into a sleep. So in due course, a child was born, and they called that child Kahava. And Kahava in their language meant star. Now at the age of 3 years old, the parents heard the sound of the wife's flute being played, and they found that it was their small child, Kahava. But not only was it discovered that she could play the flute, but her voice, even at this young age, was mellifluous, sweet and melodious. And soon they learned that she could play almost any instrument. But as she grew more beautiful every day, her lustrous eyes and her flowing hair. And so there came a time when it was forecast abroad that the queen of that realm was going to the local baths, and she invited all the women of the town to join her. Now Kahava at this age said she longed to see the queen. She'd never seen the queen. So very reluctantly, her parents allowed her to go to the communal baths to see this monarch. But they, of course, again, after they had done many times, warned her to be careful, to not let her stone be taken away from her. But when she went to the baths, the women who were there were struck by her beauty, and they remarked, "Why, she's even more beautiful than the queen." And of course, when the queen arrived, this came to her ears. And of course, when she set sight on Kahava, this beautiful being, she realized indeed she was more beautiful than herself, and she was jealous, as many of those stories have already told. So the queen then found out that Kahava could play instruments, and so she demanded that instruments be bought and a demonstration of her skills be made. And of course, when she played, everyone was brought to tears, except the queen, whose jealousy knew no ends. So, with the nefarious mind that the queen had, she plotted and then demanded that Kahava be taken to her palace to become an entertainer amongst those she had in her court. Now, of course, the parents could not refuse this demand. So it was that Kahava was taken to the palace, but in the mind of the queen, the plan was and fulfilled that Kahava was immediately to be taken down to the depths of the dungeon and left there to rot, because the queen did not want her son, the prince, to set eyes on Kahava, because it was known that he would immediately fall in love, and she did not want her son to marry a mere commoner. So Kahava was taken down to the depths of the palace to languish, hopefully in the mind of the queen, to die. But because of her gentleness and her beauty, the guards fed Kahava, and although she languished, she remained alive. But one day the queen decided that she would go and check to see that this seeming adversary, it was no longer a threat to her. And when she entered the darkness of the dungeon, she saw the glowing light of the gem that Kahava had around her neck, and immediately coveted this, demanded, "Give it to me!" But in the request or the demand, she leant forward and grabbed it from around Kahava's neck. Immediately, Kahava sank to the floor in what seemed to be a swoon. And then, of course, the queen thought to herself that this was the end of this being. And so she called the guards to take Kahava away and bury her in the forest, far away. Now, of course, the guards, knowing of her and knowing her gentleness and her beauty, found that she was not dead. She was merely sleeping. And as many of those other stories go, when they took her into the forest, they found an abandoned shack in which they placed her gently. Now the time passed, and again, as other stories go, the prince was out hunting one day, when he came across the shack, and when he entered, saw this beauty. Immediately smitten, he went back to the palace, and he said to his mother, "I have found the one to whom I want to be wed." And she said, "Is she a princess?" And the prince says, "Without a doubt, she is a princess." "Oh," said the queen, "then we will make arrangements for a wedding. But perhaps would you like to take a gift to her?" And of course the prince acquiesced to this. So as it happened, the queen brought out the stone, the gem that she had taken from Kahava, and gave it to her son to give to the maiden as a gift. So of course, when the prince took the stone and it was given to Kahava, she awoke from her sleep. And the prince asked her what had happened, what was her story. And Kahava related what had happened to her. So the prince knew that his beloved was in mortal danger. So he had her remain where she was while the wedding preparations were made. And on the day of the wedding, he covered Kahava in 7 garments, 7 veils. And then she was brought to the palace for the great ceremony, the wedding. But after, of course, the nuptials had taken place, the veils, one after the other, were removed from Kahava, and her true beauty was revealed. Everyone gasped at how beautiful she was, but the queen, with the shock of seeing one who she thought she'd disposed of in front of her eyes, dropped not only in a swoon, but into death. We know the end of the story, as these stories go. The prince and Kahava were married and lived in harmony and happily for the rest of their days. But in the way of stories, suggesting that every story is our story, it's asked of us, what do the characters, symbols, and sacred numbers in this story tell us about our own story? Of course, we can ask, what is this essence? What is this gem that we must keep with us at all times? What did the queen represent? The sabotage mechanism that we've had in our own life, putting us to sleep, so to speak, benumbing us to life. What does the prince, what does the reconciliation, what was it in us that we had to bring together, to harmonize, to be awake again? What are these 7 veils that had to be stripped away from us to reveal our true self? What do the characters, symbols, archetypes, sacred numbers represent for us as we look at our story? Do we still have a thread? Do we still have a queen that sabotages us? What is it that we have had to reconcile, to be whole, or to feel whole? What is this essence that we must reveal now, this gem? Remembering that it's with us at all times. Now knowing it can never be taken away from us. There is nothing in life that can wrench away from us that which our journey has brought. Claiming our gem. In essence, a soul. What say you?